Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. We fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. First to fight for right and freedom, and to keep
On this episode of Cigars and Sea Stories, Mike is joined by guest co-host Jeremy Paris of the Veteran Resource Podcast. Jeremy is a veteran in the U.S. Army. We've had him on the show before. Go ahead and look up the episode on cigarsandseastories.com time now. And Mr. Jeremy Paris, welcome to Cigars and Sea Stories, brother. It's so great to have you as a guest host.
Thank you. I'm really excited about this. Got a bunch of stuff lined up here, don't we?
Yes. Yeah, we have got a whole bunch of recordings lined up with a whole host of fantastic people. So far, William Tate, Blazin Tech, Bennett came on, and we had a team episode, which was awesome, just talking about veterans and podcasting. Brandon Porter joined us. We've got a couple of other episodes that are in the mix here, folks. And you're going to be seeing them sprinkled throughout the Cigars and Sea Stories lineup. Now, let me just tell you real quick here. Jeremy is, first of all, he's a salt dog when it comes to podcasting. Kind of fill folks in here. Like you and I, okay, we were talking about this before, because where I'm coming from on this is Entrepreneur on Fire. And we've used this as a guideline, so to speak.
Right.
But but how did you go about using the resources of Entrepreneur on Fire?
So when I got into podcasting, I was listening to Entrepreneur on Fire for a while. I had got to there by first listening to Internet Business Mastery, and then I moved over and I was also listening to Pat Flynn, and then Pat Flynn was on Entrepreneur on Fire as the first episode, I believe it was. And so in that roundabout way, I started listening to John Lee Dumas, Entrepreneur on Fire. And the fact that he had episodes every single day, I mean, I was in my car driving an hour each way at the time to my job. And so I would burn through podcasts like crazy. And, you know, Pat Flynn, Entrepreneur or Internet Business Mastery, all these other ones that I was listening to, you have like one or two a week. And I would be done with those the first day of the week and be looking for something else. John Lee Dumas had something on every single day. So I was listening to him every single day as part of my routine. And I just loved what he was doing. And at the same time that I was doing that, I was working with the Veteran Artist Program. And we were down in DC for this big event. It was the premiere for National Geographic Channel, American War Generals. And the Veteran Artist Program, we were one of the sponsors for this big event. So I got to go and walk the red carpet and stuff. And while I was there, it was really awesome. And while I was there, I was shaking hands all night long with all of these people who represented all of these other veteran-focused nonprofits. And across the board, I had never heard of like any of them. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just blown away by it. And I go back to B.R. McDonald, the director of the Veteran Artist Program. And I was like, hey, I can't believe that there's this many veteran-focused nonprofits out there. And he kind of chuckled a little bit, and he's like, dude, this is nothing. There's hundreds of thousands of them. And I'm like, what? You're crazy. There's thousands of these veteran nonprofits. I was in the Army for 10 years, and I've been working in the DoD space for another 10 years. And you're telling me that there's thousands of these things out there? And so I start researching it the next day, and sure enough, it's true. And I'm like, you know, if I don't know about these, then other people don't know about them. So I'm going to start a podcast where I'm informing veterans about these nonprofit organizations. And so I'll start interviewing them. Well, I knew nothing about podcasting except listening to John Lee Dumas and these other ones. So I knew, you know, that they were doing them. I didn't know what it would take. Am I going to need to build out an entire studio with soundproof glass and all of this other stuff? Right. And, you know, John Lee Dumas, he kept talking about how he had a class for teaching how to do podcasting, and kind of jumped into the, I'm going to take the cheap way and I'll take all of the free material that he's given me,
Right.
try to learn as much as I possibly could.
Yeah.
And after going through all of that and learning kind of the how-tos, I finally jumped in and paid for Podcaster's Paradise and jumped into John Lee Dumas's closed group that he's got with all of the training and all of the people, the peer support. And I really, learned everything that I possibly could in about a 2 to 3 month period.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just pulled the Band-Aid off and said, I'm launching. Let's do this.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, it's one of those things where we kind of stumbled across one another in similar networks, and it's kind of a similar story with a lot of these different podcasters. Whether it's Entrepreneur on Fire or some other resource, they go about through some sort of look, listen, feel guideline, eventually jump over and get some sort of mentorship, and then dive into it. Now, specifically on the Cigars and Sea Stories side of the house, our focus has always been to collaborate in every way, shape, and form, whether that's inside the veteran listening audience, such as with Cigars and Sea Stories. I mean, we're primarily focused towards Marines and the greater veteran community, or outside. And what I find unique about your podcast is that you cater to both, which is one of the reasons why I want to have you as a guest host here on Cigars and Sea Stories. Yours is a great podcast for both civilians and veterans alike, because I think more often than not, and this is the case in my own backstory, it's the civilians in our lives drawing our attention towards the veteran resources that are out there. My Aunt Kathy told me about EBV. She watched Mike Haney on 60 Minutes and was like, hey, you should totally do this. This is like you. And so I pursued it, Thanks,
wow.
Aunt Kath. Yeah. So I mean, I definitely see your audience being both civilian and veteran focused, and it's fantastic. Now,
yeah, and I really think that you're onto something there with the audience, because catering to just veterans, there's some organizations out there, for instance, some nonprofit organizations that cater directly to and only for veterans, and then there's other organizations that are inclusive, like Team Red, White, and Blue, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
They bring people into the community, and they, as part of their membership, they have both veteran and non-military, non-veteran, all coming together, working together in the community to build a better community. And they do that, through sporting events and different things like that. But the idea that, of veterans coming back, they don't need to just be hanging out with only veterans. They need to be, injected into the community.
Yeah. Oh, for
bringing
sure.
everybody together. That's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something that Bunker Labs does really well, especially in the brain trust communities.
Absolutely.
That was kind of my focus as far as in doing the TED Talk. I was looking to bridge that gap. You don't hear it on the TED Talk, but the intro that Bill Marlowe gave, which was awesome, is you have more in common with a combat veteran than you realize. And the whole emphasis of it is that you in life are going to go through personal IEDs. It's not that much different. It's just in that situation, everybody is focused on adding value at that moment in time. Basically, it's an attention grabber to get people to realize really there are devastating moments that happen in life, and each one of us hurt in whatever extent, and we're all members of this one tribe. So
right.
Whether folks think that's a stretch, and of course there's add value, which is the whole principle behind the thing. But the idea, though, is I look at it like a zipper effect, right? Anything and everything that we can do, not just on engaging in between our two communities, I want to pinpoint more than that, specifically in my life and what we're doing here. I want to pinpoint the ambitious veterans and the veterans who want to go out into the business leader community and, hook and jab with fellow veterans and other business leaders and stuff like that. Like, I have a podcast where I can say fuck and still, and still go and do public speaking engagements, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
So that should give license to people to be able to stand up, go and create something, And what I think is great is a lot of us, especially, and I say that because of your work with the Veteran Artist Program. Can we share the good news with the audience over here?
Absolutely. By the time this comes out, it will already have happened.
Well,
so
very cool.
Tomorrow, on February 1st, I'm officially being moved into the position as acting executive director of the Veteran Artist Program.
Very cool.
I could not be more excited about this. Let me tell you. I've been working with VAP since 2010. It started in 2009. So I was one of the, first couple of members in the organization, and they've done so many awesome things over the years that I've been able to be a part of. But now I'm given a little bit more leeway to kind of help build this thing up and make it the organization that it really can be. And I'm super excited about it.
That is very cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And let me tell you about the project, if you don't mind, that we're kicking off right now that I've been working on.
Yeah.
We have a project going on with the VA and the Center for Women Veterans that is for Women's History Month. And so we had a competition. We put the word out, the call for submissions to our veteran community. And we had just shy of 400 submissions of art from women's veterans. And this work, I mean, there's some that's like sculpture, and there's metalwork, and there's painting and quilting, and there's a little bit of everything that we had to go through. And like I said, there were just shy of 400 entries, and we had to narrow that down to 10 that are going to be on display in 10 different VA clinics across the country for the whole month of March. And
cool.
Yeah, this is such a big project to kind of, just hit the ground running with.
Right.
I've been working with the printers on this. I've been working with the artists on this, and working with Kayla over at the VA. It's been a really fun project.
Hell yes. See, and I can appreciate that because I am drawn towards ambitious veterans. Hell yes, man. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's good stuff right there. Hell yeah. Now, with the Veterans Artist Program as a whole, is there a focus as far as whether it's, we want artists that are painters, sculptors, creative in that sense? Is it video? Is it audio? Is it, what's the whole breadth of the project?
So it's a little bit of everything, but primarily, you go down either the performance or the visual. It's kind of the major break, the way that's broken down. So there's different performance art. Like we did a huge show up in New York City at the Lincoln Center, and there was spoken word, there was singing, and there was acting, and we had ballet, had a little bit of everything going on. And then we also have done like week-long workshops over with the Smithsonian, where we had people coming from all over the country for a week working on a bunch of different projects. Like one of them was Combat Paper. Have you heard of them?
No, Combat Paper. Is that like Right in the Rain?
So yeah, Combat Paper, they're doing things like taking your old BDUs and shredding them and pulping them and turning them into paper and then making art on it, doing different things like that. Like some of
I'll
the
be damned.
projects people had, like they put money from Iraq and things like that in with it, and so there were like different shiny pieces that were, from the metallic coming through and everything. There was, but yeah, it's look into that combat paper. They do some really cool stuff.
Nice. That's cool. That sounds neat. One, there are a lot of different creative non-for-profits that are out there. Like, it's bands for. Is it bands for warriors? Bands for veterans? I gotta look it up again. But basically, it takes your old utility uniform, and it turns them into like memorial bracelets.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and that's been.
I haven't heard of that one. There's another one I got to look up.
Yeah.
That's why I do the podcast.
Absolutely. See, and I think that's what's unique about this also, because we were talking about this, when we were jiving on other veteran podcasts that are out there. I think the point needs to be illustrated here that everybody has their niche, right? We're smoking and joking, bullshitting behind the, the hooch and everything else. But with yours being veteran service organizations, veteran nonprofits, whatever it winds up being, each one has its own leverage point to an extent, and we're always collaborative, and we're always pushing each other additional traffic within the space.
Right.
And I love that because it winds up being, more often than not, you'll get somebody over on your episode or on one of on one of your episodes where it's like they're straight-laced and they're talking about whatever they're doing as far as their nonprofit is concerned. And then they come over to Cigars and Sea Stories and tell us about, like, I don't know, pulling an RPG out of their leg or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
You're getting a human interest piece on a variety of different things. You know what I mean? And that's what I love about this cross-pollination. That's something that's unique to this industry of podcasting that you don't normally get through other mediums.
Well, it fits too, because you've got, podcasting, a really good podcast is going to have really good storytellers. There's podcasts out there. There's thousands of them out there now that you listen to them for about a half an hour, and it might be good information as far as the things that they're saying, good usable information, but it's boring as hell because they're not good at storytelling. Mm-hmm. But you take veterans, and almost any veteran out there is has to some degree some good storytelling abilities in them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So taking veterans and sticking a microphone in their face, it seems to fit pretty well.
Right. No, absolutely. All right, so a little bit of background here in case you didn't actually listen to Mr. Jeremy Paris's episode yet. Jeremy is a veteran of the U.S. Army. Give us some background on kind of like when you joined. I love your story about the recruiter. That was good. But tell us about kind of this unique process here, because you've had a background with a bunch of clearances, right?
Right.
And we were kind of talking about this before the show. So if you would, please, you don't need to start. There I was, right, standing on the yellow foot. We don't need to go that in depth. But you're U.S. Army.
Right. So I jumped into, I went and joined the Army right out of high school. I mean, 17 years old. That's how right out of high school it was. I had to have my mom go with me and go sign on the dotted line. We had talked about in one of the episodes about the ASVABs, and I kind of made the joke, "Oh, you didn't make pictures with yours?" Because I literally made pictures with mine. I mean, I was the kid that had the leather jacket, the jean vest over it. I had the long curly hair. I had an earring that was on a battle axe on a chain that was so long that it rested on my shoulder, to give you a visual of what I was like in high school, right? And looking this badass, you
Right.
think that you think that I won more fights than I did, but I fought all the time, and most of the time, I wouldn't win. I was a skinny little kid, but in my head I was this tough ass kid. But I had no desire at all to go in the military. So when they came around in like 11th grade and they had us all take the ASVABs, yeah, I took the bubbles and I made pictures with it. And then when I was graduating, and I mean, because I was just getting by and I was smart, I just was a smart ass. So all of the teachers hated me, and the guidance counselor didn't even give me college options. Was like, if you want, we can try to get you set up with, the community college, if you want to bother. And I'm like,
Right.
really? Like, you're telling these people that they could go out of state to places, and me, maybe the community college? So I was like, you know what? I'm going to join the Army. And just on a whim, like no thinking about it or anything, I just went and, talked to a recruiter, and they said, yeah, well, you got to have your mom come in. And I'm like, all right, let's do this. And went in there, and I knew, like, because this was on a whim, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no plan of action for like how this works, what I want to do in the military.
Right.
I chose Army because I had a friend of mine that the year before he graduated and he went in the Army. But I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna go Army. And they said, okay, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to be a soldier. I want to, go and have a gun and crawl through the woods and sleep in tents,
Yeah.
Army. And
do Army things.
yeah. And they kind of laughed at me, and he's like, well, you got to have everybody's a soldier. Everybody in the Army's a soldier, but you got to have a job, when you're not doing that. And so what I would suggest is maybe looking at some of these where you can get a huge bonus. And I'm like, bonus? Growing up dirt poor my whole life and in Buffalo, and being offered a huge bonus. Well, the very first one on the list, administration, he's like, this one pays $1,500 bonus. And I'm like, what?
It's just
rich.
so terrible.
This is so awesome. $1,500. And so I jumped on it because I could type. And so, I'm sure the recruiter was laughing to all of his buddies after I left. But after I got in, and I started off in the reserves, and so for a year and a half I was in the reserves, and I hated being personnel, because while everybody else was doing the soldiering stuff, I was in a cubicle, and I'm like, no, I want to do the Army stuff.
Right.
And I was being taught some incredible lessons, but at the time, I didn't care about any of that. I just knew what I wanted. I wanted to be a soldier, and screw all this other stuff. So my reserve unit was closing down, and they said, you can go to another personnel unit. You got to drive all the way up to Niagara Falls, which was like, I don't know, 40 minutes away. If you want to go to that one, or there's other reserve units that drill on different weekends in the same building. You can go to one of those. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, what else is there? And they're like, there's this and this and this, and there's civil affairs. I'm like, wait, civil affairs, they work with special forces and stuff, right? Yeah, I'm going to do that. So 21st birthday, I'm just turning 21. And that was the day when they sent me to go and try out for the civil affairs unit. And I did rucksack march. I did, weapons qualification, and I did land navigation and PT tests and all these things. And I get done, and it was like the best way for me to spend my 21st birthday. Most people want to go and drink their faces off, but to me, this was awesome.
Yeah.
And they got done with all the testing, and they said, you blew through this. Like, if you want to do this, you can come on board and we'll change your MOS. We'll get you trained up. There's a good amount of us in civil affairs that are officers. So if you wanted to go that route, we can help you that route. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. I loved it. However, I liked it even more than that. So I'm going to go active duty and go civil affairs. And they're like, but we're offering you, like, we can train you right now, right? We could just,
Yeah.
you're already there.
Just go
You
through
already
the pipeline.
passed the test, right? We can get you in there. And I'm like, nope, I'm going to go my way. So I go and talk to another recruiter and I say, I want to go active duty for civil affairs. Of course you do. We got this covered. We can do this. But you know what? You're already trained as personnel. So what we're going to do, we're going to get you in as personnel. And then once you get in, after you've been in for like 30 days, just go to your commander and tell him you need a 4187 to switch over to civil affairs. And I'm like, hell yeah, let's do that. So twice I got screwed.
Shame on you on the second one, huh?
Yeah. So I get in there active duty, and 30 days later I talk to the commander and I get laughed out of the room. You want to change your MOS? This is a shortage MOS. You're going to be personnel for the rest of your goddamn life. Like, crap. So so I was personnel for my whole career.
Jesus.
Thanks, recruiters.
Man alive.
But you know what? Like, in the end, looking back at it, the skills that I learned have helped me in the entrepreneurial world. They've helped me with, coming right out of the military. I got a job immediately in the DoD space because I was already kind of there here at Fort Meade. I was already working in that space in the cubicle. So I left the Army because I didn't want to be in a cubicle anymore. Took a DoD job and went right back into cubicle. But I was making good money, so I was happy with that at the time.
Dear God. Yeah, we were talking about clearances and all of this other stuff, and background checks can be a pain. And, and we were just chatting about this. I mean, when you're in the military, you move a lot, and I've moved like 20 times since joining the military. And it's like anytime that I get asked something on a background check, I'm like, oh shit, where have I lived over the past 5 years? And you're tapping the pen against the cheek. You're like, shit. Did I know? And
it's great when you start writing them down and then you forget about like 2 or 3 of them, and then you're like writing them in the margin and stuff because you already all of the dates are out of order.
Yeah. Well, and then you meet those hard chargers who, they're like, I lived at this address. Jose was my neighbor. Here is his phone number. Like,
right. I lived at one address my entire life.
Well, yeah. Well, and I got a buddy, every address that he moved to, he knew that he was going to have to do background checks the entire time because that was his background coming into the military. And so, excuse me. And so they did the big background check. Well, he had grown up in one address and everything. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to be doing this my whole career. This is what I want to do. I'm a hard charger. I want to go in federal service, everything else. He's got a binder of all of that stuff. So just when they did the background check, everything that they asked him for, he just kept all of that information everywhere that he traveled.
Wow, that's so smart.
I know, right? Like,
so wish I would have done that.
You're fucking brilliant.
I didn't even learn the first few times. Like, every time a 5-year investigation came up, it was like I was starting from scratch. Oh my God, where did I live? What am I doing?
5 years. A 5-year investigation. How often do you do these things? You know what I mean? It's like, oh dear God. Well, and it's funny because in my background, I never needed to do anything as extensive as that. Don't get me wrong. I'm the one who's tapping the cheek trying to figure out references for like a loan or like a rental agreement or something like that. I can't imagine trying to go through a background check.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too is like, you live like I did the one time. I lived in 10 different places in a 5-year period. I mean, all in the same area. I was buying houses and fixing them up, and then I would move a tenant in there and then move to a different one and buy that one. And so I was doing that for a few years and just bouncing around. Well, they're looking for like, tell me who your neighbors are. Give me a neighbor's name at this residence. Well, I never talk to neighbors. Even now, I rarely talk to any of my neighbors. Like I'll be cordial. I'll say hi. I'll have conversations with them, but I don't get in tight with my neighbors too much because it seems like a lot of work. If I'm walking out to the car, I'm running late for something, and then they stop me and they want to have a conversation about, their dog or something, then, I'm obligated to stop what I'm doing and hang out. And when you're walking by these people every day, it's a lot of work. I network with people away from my house.
Yeah. Yeah, this is my bat cave.
That's right.
Yeah. No, that's funny. Well, and see, anyway, I am very intrigued as far as where these relationships and our backgrounds as far as in podcasting and entrepreneurship, as far as our networks are concerned. Each one of us living in these different areas, each one of us growing in unique ways, each one of us entrepreneurs with different backgrounds that somehow intersect. And what I love about our tribe is that we're connected in this manner, not so much out of our individual neighborhoods, which it's good to know your community, don't get me wrong, but It's awesome that nowadays we have the ability, after leaving the safety, so to speak, of the military, and some of us are like, well, what are you talking about? But you're on base, and not everybody is a shithead. There's like 2 or 3 in the platoon, right? And then when you get out, you're diffused, so to speak, amongst the population. You're like, damn it, the ratio is totally fucked out here. You're like, yeah. Like, where are my buddies? Hey man, what's up? This is crazy. First Civ Div is nuts, bro. But we have the ability to connect on these different backgrounds. You being an Army veteran, our paths never crossed in the military. And I try to convey this message all the time. Look, don't go back. If other guys out of your past, now I say guys because I was in all male units everywhere that I went, right? I was infantry wherever I went. If other members of my platoon were to come to me and be like, hey bro, I'm doing this project now and I'm an entrepreneur as well and blah, blah, blah. Sweet. Awesome fit. But what I mean is trying to pull somebody else out of your past, essentially, and then bringing them in different directions and stuff like that. It can be dangerous. And the reason why I say this is because the time that I figured out success as an entrepreneur is when I learned how to find the other veterans who were now passionate about this similar mission that we were on, and that is entrepreneurship. And I'm sure that there are other veteran packs out there that are in the union halls, right? That are in the sales organizations.
Right.
Corporate sector and so on and so forth. So the pockets are out there.
You need to surround yourself with those people that are going to challenge you in the direction that you're going. And, like, what is that Jim Rohn's saying? You're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
Yes. Yeah.
So, like, if you're hanging around with people who aren't entrepreneurs and they, kind of look at you funny every time you have a brainstorm idea, they're like, oh my God, it would be great if we did this. And they're like, I don't know if that's going to work. They're kind of naysaying and stuff because they don't have that same entrepreneurial mind that will start, like taking a small idea that somebody says and then being able to build on that and be like, ooh, and you know what else? You could do this. Oh, and I know this guy and he could do that for you. And, having those people get together will help you grow and help you advance if they're going in the same direction that you are. If they're, going in a totally different direction, like you're saying, they might be a great person, but they're not going to help you get to where you're looking to get to.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. Well, there you have it, folks. That's why we're having him as a guest host here on Cigars and Sea Stories. Jeremy Paris of the Veteran Resource Podcast. He is an awesome dude with a cool background, and he is a fellow entrepreneur or vetrepreneur. And listen to his podcast, listen to Cigars and Sea Stories in our future episodes as we have on other guests. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us for this whole block that we're doing here. This is very cool, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really happy that you invited me on to be part of this series. This is really fun. Thank you.
Absolutely. Hey, folks, subscribe, rate, review. You can find us on iTunes and all of the Android aggregators. I'll get that out in one word, aggregators. Yeah, you can find us on there. Subscribe, rate, and review. You can follow us on Facebook.com/Cigars and Sea. Follow us on Twitter @Cigars and Sea. If you are so inclined, we'd welcome you into the closed Cigars and Sea Stories listener group. So interact with us, drop us a line, a message, whatever it winds up being. Give us your feedback, your thoughts. Thank you to our sponsors, Spartan Media, Marine 03 Operated. They are the ones who are making us look good online right now. CigarsandSeaStories.com was done by them. Also, veteranslist.us. Get a featured membership, half off, discount code Cigars and Sea. And we are proud members of the Veteran Podcast Network, Heroes Media Group. Check them out right now. Adam Bird's show especially, a quick shout out to him, The Decision Hour. That is a fantastic podcast. So, whatever. Jeremy Paris, looking forward to doing more episodes with you, brother.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
And on that note, we cue the music.
Oh,